Let's move on to Texas Tech.
Okay, Red Raiders.
Red Raiders. 17 total commitments so far for this class. Talk about what Joey McGuire has been able to put together for the class of 2025 this year.
So the class took a little bit of a step backward from last year's class that finished in the top 25 nationally. They signed the highest rated commitment ever in the history.
Micah Hudson, obviously,
the history of Texas Tech, and Micah Hudson, which helped propel them up some of those rankings lists. They're checking in as we are airing this right now at number 49 in the country, so just hovering in that top 50 range. And this year they did a good job, as always, recruiting in the Lone Star State, but they also went out of state this year to look for some talent. So they scoured the nation to find those hidden gems, and I think they did a pretty good job of putting together a class that's well-rounded, has those guys that Joey McGuire and his staff like that have that intriguing upside, and will keep them highly competitive in the Big 12.
And one of my favorite players, of course, in the state, and we've talked about him a lot here at the Dave Campbell's Texas Football Studios, but that's Hitchcock quarterback Lloyd Jones III.
Yes.
Is committed to play for the Texas Tech Red Raiders, and I think the BTZ over there is going to have more information on Lloyd Jones.
I'm sorry, you guys talking ballers? Because if you're talking ballers, you come to the ball-talking zone to talk about a guy like Lloyd Jones III, who's been dynamic for the Hitchcock Bulldog squad. Was injured late in the year, figures to be right for spring ball whenever they get going, but I'll tell you that Lloyd Jones III is potentially the future there at Texas Tech.
Yeah, to play power forward quarterback, you have to be an athlete, and you won't find a better athlete than Lloyd Jones III. Not only was he the Galveston County Player of the Year last year in his full season as a junior, he's a back-to-back basketball state champion and was an area qualifier in the 4x100 meter relay. And oh, by the way, did you know this guy raises show pigs at the Galveston County Fair?
Spectacular.
He does it all.
That's ball talking right there. This guy is a playmaker of the highest order. Comes up. What I love is his ability to throw the ball on the move, off platform, maybe move the pocket around and keep his eyes downfield. Of course, it helps to play with guys like Kellishawn Johnson out there. This is the loaded Hitchcock team, but he's the trigger man here. And you mentioned the basketball background. He's not just playing for this Hitchcock team. As a sophomore leading them to a state championship, he went for 14 points and 22 boards in the 3A state championship game. He can play with the best of them, and that athleticism is really what sets him apart.
And you see it on this tape right here. Sometimes he's got time to bake a cake in the pocket. He won't have that time at Texas Tech, but the way he's layering the ball over defenders, throwing into tight windows, that's next level arm that Lloyd Jones has been showing for 4 years now at Hitchcock.
That's right. It's layer cake around here with a Hitchcock quarterback, Lloyd Jones III, now headed to Texas Tech, and a big part of this Red Raiders class, guys.
Thanks, Tep. Man, I think I had to say Lloyd Jones is probably one of my favorite players in the entire state, probably because we've just been watching him for so long, and to see him go on to play for, staying in state and going to play for such an incredible program like Texas Tech is really exciting there. But lots of other prospects to take a look at for the 2025 class for the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Of course, Lloyd Jones there right at the top. And then it's Bryson Jones, the wide receiver out of Frisco Lone Star. I actually got to see him last week in their playoff game against Midlothian. Stephenville wide receiver Tristan Gentry. And then you've got a couple of out-of-state guys here that you're taking a look at. Elias Gillen out of South Dakota and Deontay Lindsay out of Oklahoma. Wide receiver Michael Deaver out of Lubbock Cooper. And tight end Preston Harrison out of Mineral Wells. Now, of course, they usually clean up in the state of Texas. I feel like they have always been, especially since Joey McGuire got there, have been really good at keeping guys home and in the state. But like you mentioned before, I feel like they've really pulled in a couple of guys from out of state that are going to make a big impact in this class.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, they went into states like, they got South Dakota, Nebraska, Michigan, Oklahoma. Those aren't like states that you think of traditional powerhouse recruiting territory. So I know that they saw something in these guys when they dipped into those territories to go ahead and prioritize them in the recruiting game. On that list, though, you got to keep an eye on Michael Deaver.
Yeah.
He was one of those guys that kind of came, I mean, I don't want to say he came out of nowhere because he was producing stats, but he came out of nowhere on the recruiting scene to grab that scholarship from Texas Tech. And he's a guy that I feel like has a very high ceiling. Not too many people know about him playing out in Lubbock, and not too many people have got a chance to see him, but his tape really pops.
Well, and good job for Joey McGuire and company to keep him home. I mean, I feel like Lubbock is, like you said, a quiet hotbed for some of the best
Hometown
recruits
hero.
around the state. So being able to keep him there is a huge win for the Red Raiders. Now, any sleepers that you think are in this class?
Yeah, I think that there are a bunch of sleepers in this class because they do a tremendous job of finding them throughout the state. They don't hesitate on like extending an offer. But for me, the guy that was my sleeper in this class is Braylon McDonald at Lancaster. He really had a tremendous senior season, took over as a leader of that defense for the Tigers that stepped not up only into 6A, but stepped up into the toughest district in 6A, and that's 11-6A where they played DeSoto and Duncanville, etc. every week.
Scary
right?
district.
And he shined this year, which makes me feel like he will be able to adjust to the speed of the college game quickly because the 6A speed didn't throw him at all.